The next one, which I'm pleasured to transition into right now, is an interview with Martin Whitaker, the founding CEO of JUSTCapital, and Alex Fang, who leads the social impact work at OneValley, focused on the question of what does ethical AI mean in financial services? If they can somehow generate an answer for that in the next 15 to 20 minutes, I will be blown away. But it's a really important topic for all the founders and everyone, all the other stakeholders are with us today. So with that, Alex, Martin, the floor is yours. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alec. Hi, everyone. As Alec mentioned, I'm Alex, and I lead our social impact initiatives at OneValley. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Martin Whitaker, the founding CEO of JUSTCapital, about ethical considerations in AI and financial services. Martin, thanks for joining us today.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me. Thanks to OneValley and Alex. It's great to see you again.
Yeah, likewise. It's been a minute. For the benefit of the group, can you please share a little bit about your background, how you came to be the founding CEO of JUSTCapital?
Sure. I mean, very briefly, I've been in this intersection of capital, business, and markets on the one hand, and trying to do some good in the world on the other hand. That kind of overlapping area of my entire career. I did a PhD at Edinburgh University on environmental risk assessment. Figured that I wanted to go into business. My first boss said, Martin, if you want to change the world, follow the money. So that's sort of what I've done. And I spent a lot of time in the private wealth space. I spent time at Swiss Re. I worked in the family office area. And then about a decade ago, I was approached to be the CEO of a new organization, a nonprofit, JUSTCapital, which was founded by Paul Tudor Jones and a group of other business leaders to really try and leverage the private sector and markets to really address some of the most pressing societal challenges that we face. And so that's what we've been doing for the last 10 years.
Great. Tell us more. When we first met in San Francisco, you were launching the Just AI initiative. How's that going? And tell us, for the benefit of the audience, what is that?
So the best way to explain that is just to provide a sense of what JUSTCapital does overall. We are an independent group that tracks, measures, and ranks companies, big corporations primarily, on how they perform on a range of stakeholder issues. And those issues are determined not by us, but by the American people through representative polling, survey, public opinion research. So we go to the public, we say, hey, what do you think is important? What is just? This idea of being just, what does that mean to you? And so we get a whole bunch of things that come back to us. We categorize them, turn them into an overall kind of framework for tracking company performance. We gather data that tells us how companies are doing on those things that the public have told us matter. And then we rank them. And increasingly, we're working with them, the companies, to help improve performance. And so a couple of years ago, as we started to look at what was happening in the world, what was going to affect the future of corporate performance, and the role of corporations in society, which really we should talk about. It was clear that AI was going to affect a lot of that. And so we wanted to really try and create a process for at least asking the question, if not answering it, Alec, I'm sorry, we may not get to the answer, but asking the right question is sometimes the best thing you can do. And I think we wanted to understand, what does the AI mean for a just company? What does it mean to be a good employer, to invest in your workforce in an AI future? So those are the kind of questions that the public have. Those are the kind of questions that we're trying to answer through the AI initiative. Just to frame it, to try and figure out, how do you measure it? What kind of data do you need? And how does that connect to, more classic, traditional drivers of financial market performance, total shareholder return, growth and competition.
That's fascinating. So, as you've gone down this journey to look at how AI is being deployed, what are some things that have surprised you as you've launched your initiative?
So we've had a number of webinars with different different constituencies in the financial markets and the corporate markets. I think one of the things that surprised me first off was just how nascent major investors' understanding of AI really is. I'm talking about large pension funds, large asset managers. I think it reminded me a lot of climate change, Alex, back 20 years ago when, questions are first asked, like, what does climate change mean for the global financial markets? And, it's taken probably a decade to even ask the right questions, and another decade to try and start to get some sense of what those answers might be. What does climate change mean for big pension funds, for the value at risk in their portfolios, for what it means to invest in companies that are part of the solution, not the problem, things like that. I see a lot of similarities here where it's going to take time for big investors just to figure out what this means for them. If you're running a big state pension fund, you're running a corporate pension fund or a large asset manager, most of the AI conversation is around the venture markets, private equity, and things like that. I don't see enough questions being asked around what does this mean for investors overall? Like, how should we be thinking about our portfolio, asset allocation, portfolio management? What does it mean for risk? What does it mean for opportunity? How do I position? We're still very, very early in those kinds of conversations.
Yeah, so let's go a little deeper on that. So over the past decade, JUSTCapital has played an integral role in helping companies define their climate strategy, articulate their net zero goals, and help them create plans on how to get to those net zero goals. What role do you think JUSTCapital is going to play in answering the questions related to AI for these companies in the future?
That's a great question, Alex. So we have, again, just a step back, we take a systems-wide view of the role of corporations in society. When you ask the American people, what matters to you about companies today? What do you think about? What do you care about? It comes down to 5 categories. One is how companies treat their workforce, their employees. 2 are the communities where they operate. 3 are the customers. 4 is the environment, and 5 is being run by people with integrity and ethics, which relates to governance. And it also includes making money. People know that companies have to make money and be profitable in order to succeed. So you get a very real world view of sort of, the spectrum of things that matter today to the standing of corporations in society and how they can compete and win. Those things over the last 10 years have become way more important to the bottom line. Companies that do well in treating those stakeholders right will do better in the markets. And our data, our financial work, our indices, we have about $500 million in different funds managed according to our data. All of that would show that there's a very strong business and investment case. So we have learned, to answer your question, that simply by tracking what companies are doing in a very objective, data-driven way, doing that using metrics that companies believe matter, so they have to be kind of relevant to how companies are run. They have to be actionable. So if a company wants to improve on something, they can actually take action to do that. And then there's sort of recognition of leadership, which is a core part of our strategy. Our partnership with CNBC has given us a pretty big megaphone to highlight leadership as we see it. So you apply AI across all of that. I think our biggest contribution, first of all, is to put it on the map of large corporations and how are we really how are we really tracking performance? How do you know which companies are doing a great job of using AI or leveraging AI for the benefit of their employees, of the communities where they operate, of their customers internally, so that they're well governed, to benefit the environment, combat climate change, things like that. And which companies, let's say, are not doing a good job of those things? Which companies are behind the curve? So by tracking that, by recognizing leadership, identifying best practice, discovering new data. So that's in this case is going to be essential, because I don't think we've really figured out how to measure what leadership on AI looks like in the workplace, for example. There's no standard metrics for those. So I think progress in that direction will require the development of more universal standards and data, but generally going in that direction of helping the market figure out who's winning, who's losing, and then how do we reward and punish those companies.
That you bring up a great point, and I want to talk a little bit more about usage of data, and get your perspective on a pretty common question that startups face. So, it's sometimes unclear if data can or should be used to train models due to copyright issues or a host of other potential ethical and occasionally legal concerns. But for smaller startups that are moving fast with limited resources, it can be hard to balance whether or not they should scrape data or use data that it's unclear whether or not there are any kind of legal rights to that data. So, how would you suggest that they think about the ethical AI and the balance that's necessary in being competitive and moving quickly, versus the need to practice the ethical use of managing that data?
Well, I'm not an ethicist, so I caveat my answer with that. I would say, what I've noticed from studying companies, running JUSTCapital, and really looking at how leadership with integrity drives success. I think the answer to that question you asked me is no different than how you would run a company with integrity anyway. Every company that we see that does well, that does the right thing by its stakeholders, has somebody at the top who believes in running their company with real integrity. And, it's very difficult to kind of pin that to the wall. It shows up in the way they do business. It shows up in a sense of values at the company. It shows up in companies trying to do the right thing. It doesn't mean they don't make mistakes. It doesn't mean that they're somehow kind of ethically pure. But it does mean that they try to do the right thing. And I think it applies here too. Smaller companies, private companies, I think there's an awareness about what's happening in the world. Brookings Institution, for example, just did a great study on AI in the workforce, AI in the workplace, what that means. Awareness of that can be applied in a very unique way, or a very customized way to every company. And so I think it means different things to different companies, but asking the right questions, having the culture to engage in conversation and debate within a company about important matters like that. Those are universal things. They apply just as much to AI as any other aspect of corporate or company leadership.
Excellent. Okay. So, in your work with financial institutions, many of which are trying to serve underbanked or underserved populations, how do you think, what role do you think AI is going to play in democratizing access to financial services? Do you see any momentum or particularly exciting projects that you think will change the future?
I think in a macro view, the previous panelist, Sal, was talking about, starting a business. I mean, it kind of interested me because I think the same thing would apply to investing. So few people really think about markets and how they can participate, how they can put their capital to work. It is a very sort of pure expression of democratic right to be able to buy, to be a participant in the stock market, for example. But, awareness of that, education of that, understanding how to run your finances. I think being able to democratize that, get many more people participating in the system. One of the problems we have in the world right now is that there are a lot of people, majority of people, just don't think the markets are working for them. They don't think that the system is working for them. And when you don't think the system works for you, you're kind of apt to want to tear it down. You want to break it down. And I think we have a lot of people feeling cut off and disenfranchised, trying to regain some sense of ownership and through participation. AI can help with that. I'm also minded of very concrete applications. Our mutual friend Phil Chow at Humanitas, the work he's doing there is super impressive, to really try and help the lowest, the worst off in society gain access to basic services, basic sources of financial support or other kinds of aid and benefits, navigating that benefit system. If anybody on this Zoom call or webinar has ever done that, is a nightmare. Navigating health benefits, as I've had to do in the course of my life, is just incredibly difficult. I mean, I can't imagine how people do that if English is not their first language, for example. So I think AI can help with so much of that, and it will regain a sense of faith in the system that will allow more and more people to participate in creating a better, more inclusive, prosperous future.
Yeah, wonderful. I couldn't agree more. And the work that Phil's doing at Humanitas really is incredible. There's been a fair amount of talk today about how AI will make our lives better by making work streams more efficient, removing the need for human intervention. I want to ask you, in the areas of fintech, what parts of human expertise do you see as indispensable and irreplaceable with AI?
Well, I'm very cautious about making projections like that, because the minute you do that, you probably find yourself redundant. I think there's a sense now that the judgment that comes with how to deploy AI in a way that is, for the most, creating the most mutual benefit, and the complexity that runs across all of the kind of the trade-offs associated with that. I think there's you can't really take out the need for human judgment in that deployment. In financial services and investing more broadly, as opposed to the functions that go, that underpin decision making, where AI can play obviously a crucial role. But I work a lot with families, with investors, and have worked a lot with investors throughout my whole career. And there's a sense of purpose, a sense of legacy, maybe, that drives people forward, that creates the kind of future that they want. Capturing that is very, very difficult. And I think, that is an area where if you're fiduciary, if you are investing on behalf of other people's futures and you are trying to keep those best interests in mind, I suspect that if humans do have a future in investing, it's probably longest in that area.
Excellent. So I know that we are running short on time. I want to wrap up with one big question. So what is your vision for the future of AI? And if you had to, give some advice, how can we ensure that it serves the greater good rather than just a handful of small private interests?
Well, JUSTCapital is kind of founded on this faith in the public point of view. That's why we do the polling. And I'll give you an anecdote. When we first started, we went to the American people. We told people in our inner circle or our friends, we're going to ask people all around the country what a just company is. And most of the opinions we got back were sort of like, why would you do that? The public don't know anything. The public can't agree on anything. They're going to get the answer wrong. And in fact, the opposite was true. We saw a lot of agreement. We saw a lot of very strong kind of kitchen table values that were uniting in nature, not dividing. Most people want the same thing. They want a better future for themselves, for their families, for their loved ones. And so I think the biggest challenge AI has, and those practitioners, those developing AI, and certainly those deploying it within large situations, is to do that in a way that is in the broader, enlightened best interest of the population. And there should be a mechanism for asking people. I feel as though it's really not for a few people to decide what's good. I would much rather go to the public and ask them, what do you think? In terms of layoffs, is there a just way to do layoffs, which is a question we have asked. Is there a just way for you as a frontline worker, as a retailer, a cashier, to have AI make your life better? What does that look like? Anytime you start to ask people how to, use AI in a beneficial way, you're going to get a good answer. So I would see a lot more of that, and I would place a lot of faith in that, and I think that will steer us right.
Wow, well said. Martin, it has been such a pleasure interviewing you today. There's so many more questions that we have, but we're going to have to end it there. It's been incredible. Thank you again for joining us.